This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret word is spanakopita.
If I take my time.
Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. Today's guest is Rachel Corsini. Rachel Corsini is a writer of women's fiction with heavy romance. Her debut, Sushi and Sea Lions, was published last year by Creative James Media. Rachel's an avid reader, ballet dancer, coffee addict, and crochet plushie maker. She currently resides in Freeport, Long Island. Welcome, Rachel. Very glad to have you here today.
I am really excited to be here. This is great.
Yeah, so our folks who are watching on YouTube can see that we're wearing these costumes, but the folks who are listening to the podcast, we have to describe our costumes. So what did you choose to wear as a costume for today's show?
As ever, the crazy cat lady, because I just feed into the stereotype, which is more poignant now than ever. So I have like plushies like pasted all over me, little like cat plushies, and I'm in a bathrobe and fluffy slippers and super comfy.
And the curlers, loving the curlers.
The curlers, and I'm living out my cat lady dreams.
Excellent.
Without children.
Yes. I have had cats. I have dogs. People can see my dogs are in the room. We're going to see how that goes. But I have had cats, and I have this theory that all cats are secretly French existentialists, and that we have been mishearing them. They're not actually saying meow. They're saying merde. And they're just, it's, and they're just going, it's all shit like that. They're just walking around. And so I am dressed as a French existentialist. So I have my black turtleneck on and a beret, and I'm sipping coffee that's better than yours, and I'm smoking cheap cigarettes. And I'm just going to go for the French existentialist thing for the whole show. Mad.
As someone who, I'm not just the cat lady without the cat. Like, I used to have a cat for many, many years. She was hilarious, and anyone will tell you she used to give the best judgmental face because she was older than dirt when she finally went over the Rainbow Bridge. I mean, I was so fortunate. She was 22 years old.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And she was just wonderful and hilarious. And I mean, so talk about being a crazy cat lady. Like, she was half deaf, had no peripheral vision left, but still sassier than ever. And so, yeah, the crazy cat lady, I'm just living it, except I have not yet gotten another cat. It was very...
Yeah, I have had a couple of cats. Our best was Hume, named after David Hume. And Hume was just this, would just go on these tears where he would just run around the room. And one of my favorites was one of my friends was over, and I can't remember what we were watching. We're just sitting around watching TV, and he decides to go on a tear and then stops at her head and just kind of stops all of a sudden, looks at her and goes, whack, and then goes running around. And she was just like, what just happened? Why? And then he was fine, super chill. But I've also had the really dumb cats. We had one cat that was so afraid of people that it would just kind of hide in the closet. And, it was, not a bright cat, could barely keep itself clean. You end up with, there's a lot of variety of personalities in the cat world.
Reggie used to just judge everyone. She would just lay in her fluffy bed and look at you like, really this is how we're living our life now? Is this what's happening? Right? Really?
Yep. You need to get up and feed me right now.
Yes. No.
And you're like, but I don't feel like it. Don't you? I think you do.
And I mean, and at her age, I gave her whatever she wanted.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, girl, you can have whatever you want. I
Yep.
don't care. You could have as many licky treats as your heart desires.
Yeah.
I
You've
didn't.
made it to 22. You win. You get everything.
She
Yes.
won.
That's
She literally won.
yeah, that's very much our attitude with the even the even the puppies. Like we're trying to train them, and at the same time we're like, and we're spoiling you rotten. And we just
Yeah.
acknowledge that's part of being a pet owner is
Yep.
yeah, probably you don't need this many little toys all over the floor, but if it keeps you from chewing on books and stuff, then you get
Oh
all
my
the
God.
toys. They're
Well,
so
that's
spoiled.
like my fear with dogs is that they'll like chew up all of like my stuff, and I'd be like, "What are you doing?"
They will. So Crystal, my wife's has like her shoes in like a bin thing, and she'll have her slippers, in the morning, and she'll set them on top. And I'm like, if you don't put them inside, and sure enough, the dogs will go, they were available to us. I guess we'll chew on these. And so she's to the point now where she's just buying like, the $7 slippers from Dollar General. So they just keep becoming toys. So we're reinforcing this behavior at this point. Now
Yes.
they'll be replaced. You can just, chew on the slippers. There'll be more slippers. And I'm like, they're gonna go after my boots. But they haven't yet.
Unlimited supply of slippers.
Yes, the infinite Dollar General slippers. So I've been really excited to have you on the show. You are not only an author, you are involved in lots of other creative pursuits. So what else have you been doing to creatively lately?
So I like you said, right? Like I've always been involved in the arts like my entire life, right? So I before I really got into writing, I was always a ballet dancer. So I've been doing ballet since, oh my God, since I'm like 4 years old.
Yeah,
So over 30 years. So I like, which is very strange because in my everyday life, I'm not as disciplined, but ballet is like extremely disciplined. Like,
very, yeah.
yeah, like you come to class has a very specific structure. I think I needed that though, because I am the flaky, like crazy creative, and my mind is works in that way, right? And I'm always like creating stories, or I'm always thinking about things outside the box. Even like being a teacher and like my curriculum and stuff like that is very much designed that way. And so like ballet was very structured. It's
Yeah.
like you come in, you do your exercises at the bar first, then the bars go away, then you do your center work, and you do your waltz, and then your petit allegro, and it's like very, very structured. But I've been doing that since I'm like a very, very small child.
Yeah.
And, I think, but it taught me a lot too, like, because there's actually a quote in my debut novel, in Sushi and Sea Lions, that says, there are no good jobs in ballet.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah.
It's ballet is one of those art forms where it's like you're striving for perfection, but perfection doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And also, I grew up in the old school time of ballet instruction where it was very rare to hear from your teacher, excellent work, good
Yeah.
job, that was great,
Yeah.
right? There was very little of that. It was more so, well, that was good, but
Yeah. Here are the ways you're failing.
now you need to fix this.
Yeah.
Now you need to do this. It was always like you were always fixing something. You were always doing something. You were always improving on something. And I think that prepared me for a lot. And also a lot of rejection, because it is fierce.
Yeah.
I mean, it is fierce. They hold no punches in the ballet world, right? Like, you're good enough, you're not good enough, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too thin, you're too fat, you're too this, your feet aren't good enough. You're like, so it is really cutthroat. So like, circling back to the writing thing, like, I had other friends asking me like, how are you dealing with all like the query rejection and like all of the no's and no's and no's? And I'm like, I don't know. I just get a no and then I send another one out. Like,
Yep.
whatever. Like, it is
Yep.
what it is, And I think that like growing up in that environment taught me that.
It is. I mean,
Right.
it's a similar kind of economic model in that in
Yeah.
both writing and ballet, there are too many people who want in, and therefore
Yeah.
we are devalued. Like, like Hey, they get to decide because there are lots of dancers, there are lots of authors. So yeah, that it is
And
a lot of no's.
weirdly, like outside of the writing space, like with ballet, it's like a female ballerina, unless you are extraordinary, we like, suffice it to say, we're a dime a dozen,
Yeah,
right? Like, how many little girls do their first dance recital and they're in pink and sparkles and glitter and they say, I want to be a ballerina?
right.
It's like, and either like you continue to do it like me, like psychopath over here, right? Like where it was like I was still 13 and 14 years old telling my mom I wanted to be a ballerina, or eventually like your dream changes and then you don't do
Yeah.
that.
Well, I mean, it's and it's the same thing. Some, ballerinas get too many no's and say, that's it, I'm out. And it's the people
Yeah.
who push through and go, I got a lot of no's and I'm still going to stick with this.
Yeah.
And that's, the same thing for writers. I mean, I think there are a lot of folks out there who I went into the query trenches and I got 100 no's. I guess I'm not going to do this, rather than the folks who say, I guess I'll write another book, you know?
Right. And yeah, so that's like a very real thing. I did get fed up with the when I mean, and it's also at a time, like you said, a very vulnerable time in your life too,
Yeah.
when you have to make this decision regarding ballet and the professional dance world. It's like you're 16 and 17 years old, and like either you're going to do it or you're not. And like, it was just becoming a very unhealthy environment for me. And so
Yeah.
that's when I decided to walk away. And I said, you know what? I don't really think I'm going to be happy doing this or living my life this way. And then, so I said, okay, enough. Like I'd had enough. And then the writing thing, like kind of came from that. And so it's
Yeah.
like, and then I went into something else that tells all the time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes. But you were ready for that now. You were, yeah, that's
And
uh,
it's like just I'll just do things that continue to beat you up.
right, right. Yes. There is some abuse there I'm just gonna keep getting rejected. This is my life now.
Yep, why not? It's okay.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
Uh so outside of, so are you still doing ballet? Just, do you
Yeah,
still do dance just for, your own sake?
I do. I do actually. It took me a while, like after I stopped and then I went to college and I, did a bunch of different things. And it took me like a few years before I went back and just took class and just like enjoyed it for the fun that it is and that it's something that I love. And I always kind of joke around like ballet, like when you really love ballet, it's like this very weird cult that you kind of can't get away from.
Yeah.
Like it's this it's just this thing inside of you, whether dance professionally or not. Like you either you end up like going back. It's weird. It's like a bad boyfriend,
Yeah, yeah.
that like reaches out to you and you're like, I guess.
I
Sure.
guess.
Let's go get ice cream.
On the
Like,
other hand, you've got to have a very different kind of valence on all of it when you're doing it for fun and you're looking
yeah,
at the other people and you're going, you're in the cult and think you can't get out, but I'm here for fun.
yes, yes. And so I do. I take class. I take class very regularly. I'm actually going to, because summertime, but I'm taking class tomorrow morning. Um, and I also actually, like, as a second job, I also teach ballet during the school year. I teach one night a week. So, I've used it for something, like,
Oh
and
yeah.
I do, and I like teaching it and I like sharing what I know with the girls and whatever. And I'm kind of the mindset where, like, yes, like you should learn and your technique should get better, but it should still be fun. Like
Yeah, I'll
ballet,
bet
it's
you are a very
yes,
different teacher than your teachers because you also have
yes,
teaching experience, as
yes,
a teacher
yeah.
in your day job, and know, like, just beating people down all the time does not lead to the best results.
No, I mean, I have lectured them about certain things, but I do ultimately, like, my thing is like, this should still be fun.
Yeah.
Like I can tell if you're not enjoying it, right? And that's like, and to me personally, that's what makes like the best ballerinas, right? Like one of my favorite ballerinas to watch is Marianela Nunez, because I mean, she's beautiful. I mean, she's absolutely stunning. She's a principal dancer with the Royal Ballet, but there's like this joy in her
Yeah.
when in anything that she's dancing. And I share that example with my students all of the time. I'm like, do you, like, if you watch her, do you see the joy inside of her? Right? It's like you have to have that too, or like you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Like the minute the joy is gone, you have to sit back and ask yourself, why am I still here? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And,
And
so like they kind of listen to that.
well, and how do we, I mean, as teachers, then bringing that into our classrooms too, we have, you have students who have not chosen to be there. They're
Oh,
not, and so how do we say, but this should be fun. Like we should be enjoy, this last year I had a really positive year because I kind of like rediscovered the joy in teaching, because I was like, oh, I'm really having fun. And then my students were like, oh yeah, this is kind of fun. But like, how do we,
yeah.
bring that sense of fun into our rooms? It is a challenge when they're not selecting to be there.
Which is funny that you bring that up because I don't know if I really got into this, but before like we got jumped on here, but I teach at a school in New York City that's for undercredited overage high school students.
Mm,
So they all hate school.
yeah,
They all hate
because
school.
school has failed them.
Yes, they all hate school. They all hate teachers. And for the most part, they really, really, really hate English and they hate to read.
Yeah,
So the way I make it fun is I tend to introduce them to things that shock them a little bit, probably on the edgier side of
yeah,
literature. And they're like, wait a minute, there's
yep,
stuff out there that's like this. And I'm like, yes.
yeah.
And they are shocked. Like, I mean, we've read Neil Gaiman's Snow Glass Apples in my class.
Oh yeah.
And they
They're
are
like, wait, they're what?
they are beside themselves.
Yeah,
They are like, what is going on? I've read Fables in my class, Bill Williams' Fables, a graphic novel, and they love that.
yeah,
They can't believe some of the stuff that's in there, and they start laughing. And then, of course, I always preface that with like the fairy tales, and a lot of them have never read the original fairy tales, and so they are also shocked
yeah,
at the depravity and like the moral implications of all of those fairy tales too. And so that makes it fun for them because they're like, what? Wait a minute.
yeah. Oh, so when I started teaching, the ninth grade English, Romeo and Juliet, you do Romeo and Juliet, and
Right.
for folks out there who have not read the play in many, 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 since you were in ninth grade, there are all these sexual innuendos in the first scene. Is these? I mean, it's filthy in terms of
Right.
one guy's threatening to rape the maids of the other family. It's really, really dirty, but it's all these jokes. And when I started teaching, my colleagues were like, just don't explain the jokes to the students. They won't get them anyway, and you can just kind of gloss over all that. And I was like, no way, I'm leaning into this. Like, that's why they are super into it. And then the kids were totally into it because they were like, this play's filthy. And there's really no more dirty jokes. That was it. But they were,
Yes. Yes. And like, so we, in my AP class, we did Hamlet, right? And I think you know what scene I'm going to talk about. There's one part in Hamlet where him and Ophelia, they're sitting like watching the play, and he like puts his head in his lap and he makes like this dirty, dirty comment. And so my kids were like, so I paused and my kids are like, wait a minute,
wait, does that mean?
wait a minute. And I said, oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
And they are like, get out. And they were really into Hamlet, I think, because it's like so much, it's
Yeah.
drama,
Yeah.
drama.
And
And
it's so
so
internal.
it is internal, and they were so into it, and it's so much drama. But again, and like talking about all of the jokes that are in Shakespeare and all of that, they loved that. Like when we started talking about it, I was like, because one of the big things in Hamlet too is Shakespeare making fun of plays and acting itself and how
Yeah.
ridiculous it is. Like it's ridiculous. And I was like, you understand this what he's doing. He's poking fun at his own art form and
Yeah.
saying that it's actually kind of bad.
Yeah.
Like it's bad. Like
And
and they're like,
unrealistic and
yeah.
yeah. And yeah, that's a great, for the kids to realize. And one of the things we talk about in classes, I always say to them, Shakespeare didn't, yeah, the dogs are like desperately wanting attention right now. So that Shakespeare wanted to sell tickets. Like he didn't care if we were reading his plays 400 years later. That
Oh
didn't
no.
get him any money, you know?
And like, and I also told them too, I'm like, you have to remember, like back in the day, I was like, this was it was trash.
Yeah,
Like
this was summer
Shakespeare,
blockbusters. These are the Marvel movies of Shakespeare's
yes,
day. Like this
yes.
was the
I
summer
said,
blockbuster.
and they were like, and now we read them as like the ultimate, like the ultimate English text
Yeah,
and whatever. And I said, yes, but back in the day, if you were spending the day watching Shakespeare, it was trash.
yeah,
Like you were watching a telenovela all day,
yes, yep,
right? And they were like, that's brilliant. And I said, yes,
yeah,
and he knew it, and he knew it, and he
yeah.
knew it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and when you read The Tempest, he's kind of going, "Have I wasted my life?" And we're reading him, and we're like, "But you're Shakespeare, and you're struggling with the question of did you waste your life?" Like, yeah, he'd
it's
made
in
his, you know,
it's in all of his plays. I mean, again, like referencing Hamlet, like to be or not to be, like,
yeah.
do we exist or do we not exist? Like he was, he was very existential. Like
Oh
one of
yeah.
my students, when we did the soliloquy, one of my students was yo, miss, this is really heavy for a Monday morning. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then like this, and the same kid like said to me, he's like, but even back then, people thought these things, like these questions, like why do we exist? Like why do we do what we do? Is it even worth it? I said, yes. What do you think? Humanity is that different? We're not that
Right.
different.
Yeah.
It's still the same.
Yep. Yep. And
Universal,
and I love that moment when the kids kind of realize like, oh, this isn't, we're not better or worse than this. And if I could, if I could ask deep questions and make a bunch of money, like, yes, this is entertaining people is the role of literature. It's not
Yes,
just this dry thing to be studied.
yes,
We are trying to actually engage and entertain. And then they're like, oh, it really is fun. Yeah, this is really fun. And you can learn from this how to write a better summer blockbuster. Like
yep,
this is
yep,
the point. I
absolutely,
also tell them I am not teaching you this because I care about Shakespeare. He's dead. I don't care about him. I'm teaching you this because I care about you, and this can benefit you. And they're like, oh, okay. It's a different way of
yeah,
rather than like Shakespeare is this person I revere. No, Shakespeare's a corpse.
yeah.
He
Like,
doesn't
what do I
care.
care?
I teach this to you because you matter to me.
Right.
Um,
But we've had fun. My kids are
yeah,
they're hilarious.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like if we can enjoy them, then that makes the day go a lot faster.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure you've had those years where you end up with a really rough bunch and you're like, this is going to be a long year.
Well, so again, like just like to explain like my students. So if you think about, at a regular school where you have some kids who are like academically motivated, and then you have some who are like the middle ground, and then you have those kids where it's like, sir, I do not understand how you were either A, have not been arrested for something dumb, or B, your parents have not done something horrible to you or whatever it is, right? So the third level of child is every single
Yeah.
student that sits in my class.
Yep. Although
All
when
the
they
kids.
plug in, it's magic. Because
Yes, but when
often
those
it's
kids,
school didn't work for me. And then when they're like, oh my gosh, I hate everything, but your class is cool. Then they've got all this like pent up energy and creativity, and they're ready.
and
But
I'm very big on like tapping into that, right? And like access to them. Like I do like a bunch of different things. Like we do like not just like your standard essays and stuff. Like we do visual projects, and we
yeah,
do like they do some stuff like on the computers, and yes, they have to read, but sometimes I pair it with like film and all
yeah,
different types of media for them, and they see that like English class isn't just stuffy old books, and they
yeah,
make things. And like one of the projects we did murders in the room morgue, and they did their final project was, first of all, they were also shocked that it was who the murderer actually is. They were
yeah,
like, this is also ridiculous. And I was like, yes, I know it is, and it's
yeah,
funny. And they're like, it is kind of funny. And then
yeah,
right, but they did their final projects was not an essay, it was creating a movie poster. And
yeah,
developed
I've
and
done that
created a
one.
movie
That's a good one.
poster. Yeah, based on Murders in the Rue Morgue. And some of my kids are brilliant artists, and
Yeah.
they like cut things out and they pasted things and they advertised and they gave the slogan. And it was great. You know, it was like, I'm not going to make you write an essay. This is a short story, but like, let's have fun. Let's do this instead. And they loved it. And they were hanging up in my room and stuff. And, you know, I do a bunch of things like that
Yeah.
with them.
The dogs are going crazy. I apologize to the listeners if the mics are picking up the dogs fighting.
They are being very cute and adorable. And
Yes, they're flopping all over. Well, so I've got the 2 puppies and then a 90-pound wolf is on my foot, and he's fine. He's super chill, and the 2 of them have decided this is an appropriate time to wrestle with one another. You guys,
they're so cute. I can't take it.
Yeah, they are too cute for their own good. Crystal will often like look at them and say, "Nature made you cute, so you wouldn't be murdered right now." You know, because and they are. They're adorable and annoying.
I mean, like, I don't know if everyone's gonna get like, oh my God, I can't believe you're gonna say this, but it's also like babies, right?
Yeah.
It's scientifically proven that babies are designed to be cute because the amount of care that they take and the shrill shrieking that they do, if they weren't cute, you as a parent, you'd probably actually kill them.
Yeah, or our ancient ancestors would have just said, "We'll leave this one in the forest.
We're gonna leave you in the woods."
This one's terrible," but they're like, "But it's too cute. I can't." Yep. Oh, we are. Yes, we are evolutionarily designed to keep those babies alive.
Yep. Childless cat lady.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yes. So, so what have you been? What in pop culture has been pulling you away from your work, especially this summer? What have you been into?
Oh my God. So pop culture wise, I was first of all the obsession. I just finished watching oh my God, have you watched The Serpent Queen?
No.
I love all of these like historical like drama things. And so The Serpent Queen, I just binged like the first 4 episodes. I can't like tear my eyes away from it. And this is not even in a genre that I write. I write nothing like this. I do no research for any of my books.
Yeah.
However, I am compelled. And of course, anything about murder. I don't know what it is.
I don't know the historical context for this one. What is this one?
It's about Catherine de' Medici and the Valois court. And she was, let me tell you, that woman was formidable. She was a force. And it's kind of like, it's pretty historically accurate, but there's also like some fourth wall breaking that she does, and like her little quips are like brilliant. And you also see the ridiculousness of the French court at that time, and like her knowing that like her children were half incompetent.
Yeah.
And so she continued to run the French court. I mean, just brilliant. Really good storytelling. Stars is really great. And then what else have I watched? A lot of like, you know, those Netflix like murder documentaries.
Yeah, I went through a phase of the cult documentaries. There was like the Scientology one on HBO, and there was what was the one about the people who got the tattoo and everything? Like that was wild.
Yes. And also, you know, I've been, you know, since I've been off, like you said, about reading, I've been like binging the romances, which does apply a little bit to my writing. It is kind of like research.
Oh yeah, that's homework.
Yeah, that's homework. So I finished this summer, I finished Do Your Worst by Rosie Danan, which was brilliant. Basically she's a curse breaker. Her name is Riley, and she's a curse breaker. So there's like kind of this supernatural element, but it's not totally unbelievable. Like it's not totally supernatural.
Yeah.
And then Clark is actually an archaeologist whose career was like undermined by some thing that happened, and they come together at this Scottish castle. They also have a thing for Scottish romance. Outlander, I mean, that was, you know, peak romance, Jamie Fraser and Clare, like, you know. So that I just finished, and I also finished Go Hex Yourself. So another one of this like romantic supernatural type thing. He's a warlock that everybody hates. I like this like grumpy sunshine kind of. He's a warlock that everyone hates, and she's this down and out and needs a job. And so she shows up at the witch's house to like be her familiar, her apprentice. And it goes from there. And I love that. Like the world building is like super easy and it's really quippy and
Yeah, what's that one? That sounds the Warlock one. What's the title of that
go
one?
hex yourself.
Go Hex Yourself. Okay.
And then there's the second one. I actually read the second one first. They're standalone, so you don't really need to read either one. But they're by Jessica Clare. So it's Go Hex Yourself and oh my God, what is the second one now? I don't know, but I can't remember the title of the second one. But in the second one, the girl has a pet squirrel named Pistachio, and obsessed.
Yes.
Because the main character in that one, he's like, I cannot believe I have allowed this vermin to live in my house.
Yeah. Pistachio.
Pistachio. Love it. Yeah, so they're by Jessica Clare and they're super easy. They're like really quick reads.
Oh,
and
that sounds great.
We like we like some raunchiness because my books are raunchy, so I read, the raunch. Yeah. I gotta read that.
So what about in the news? What has been getting your attention in the news lately?
So to be fair, I'm not a news watcher in general because I started to realize not that I'm a total moron when it comes to current affairs and like what's going on in the world. I don't like to be totally out of the loop. Like I feel like that's not really good. But, watching the news on a regular basis or like being like hyper into politics and stuff like that started to make me very, very anxious and like really upset about the state of the world.
I do too much. And then I have to go, this is not constructive. Why am I doing this to myself? But I go too far.
Yeah. And I have to like step away, but not that I don't know what's going on. So I'm not like a news freak. But one of the things that really just gets me crazy, like whenever I see it, is like is all the book banning and stuff going on in our country. Yes. And like just the idiocy around literacy and the politics around that. I'm like, reading should not be political. You should be able to read whatever the hell you want. And who's in whose right mind do you say you're saying what belongs in a library or what belongs in a classroom? I'm like, have you read a book? When was the last time you read a book?
Yeah. A lot of our system around trying to prevent that is folks who want to, challenge any book have to read it and have to go through and identify what they're objecting to. And often that dissuades most of them because they're like, oh, I didn't actually want to read the book. I just was told by, Moms for Fascism that I should, ban this book.
Right. Like, I mean, I just read recently, like they banned Judy Blume in a state. And I'm like, Judy Blume, right. Judy Blume, please.
Yeah.
Please. It makes me so angry. And then the other thing in the news that's like been very distracting is, again, because education is very important to me, is the lack of separation of church and state that's happening down south. You have law, you have to place the 10 Commandments in your classroom. You have to teach the Bible now. I'm sorry. I'm like, who are you to tell me like what religion belongs in a classroom? Religion doesn't belong in any classroom unless you pay to go to religious institutions.
Right. If somebody wants to pay for that for their child, that's fine. But forcing it on every other child, would not go well if they tried to do that. I would be like, okay, we're going to do a real critical analysis of the 10 Commandments here. This is not, you don't want that in my classroom.
No, you don't want it in my classroom.
That would not go well.
You don't want it in my classroom either. Like, I mean, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 10 years. Am I a practicing Catholic? No. And everyone feels the way they do about religion. I definitely believe in a higher power, but I'm not, especially after what's happened in this country, I'm not big on organized religion. I think organized religion is like the fruit of evil. It makes people think they can do whatever they want and say, but I'm a Christian and I belong to this religion and I'm automatically a good person. Not for nothing, from the mouths of people that have said that, they are some of the most awful people that I've ever met.
I heard this great point by this evangelical pastor who's very critical of the way Christianity is behaving in this country. And he said, that the point that he made that I thought was brilliant was Christians have been taught to give more grace to people inside their building than outside.
Yeah.
And so instead of being this place that says, welcome, whatever it is, the way that you choose to live your life, you're not part of our community, so that is forgivable, welcome. But holding themselves to a higher standard, they're spending all this energy saying everybody outside of this building is living their lives wrong, and we're going to
Yep.
criticize them all the time. But when people in here are doing all those same things, then we give forgiveness and grace. And that was a really valuable insight for me. And like, how could this, group be spending so much time trying to control the lives of those of us outside? Well, they believe in grace for them, not for you.
For them, right? It's always like for them,
Yep.
right? So that's my take on news. I could get into other things that are, that are on my mind or that I've been like looking at, but those are like my big
Yeah.
takeaways. And I don't like speak on things like I don't really know that much about either, even though I have like minor opinions or things like that. So, but yeah, those are my big
But yeah,
big
that
ones.
Louisiana Ten Commandments one, that's one to watch. I have been
Yeah.
really concerned about how that, is going to spread. Is that going to be the next thing that we're going to have the next battle we're going to have to fight? Because, for years, people have, will post something on Facebook where they'll say, the problem with the schools is we don't have prayer in schools. And I always have to say, kids are allowed to pray. I absolutely, kids, before my exams, kids are praying. Like they are allowed to pray. That's fine. But do you want me to tell them who to pray to? And then the folks go, oh, no, no, no. And on second thought, no. I'm like, I could lead a prayer to Thor if you want. Like I can, if you're going to let teachers decide, I don't think that's what you want in your schools. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that one
And
plays out.
and I teach in New York City where we are inclusive of every single religion. I
Yeah.
mean, I get holidays off, school holidays off for the major Jewish holidays, the major Muslim holidays. I am off for Diwali this year. I am off for Lunar New Year. We are culturally inclusive in New York City. And I will be damned if you make me hang the 10 Commandments in my classroom.
Right. Well, one of the things my wife and I were talking about with this is she was like, well, okay, what if you hung the Ten Commandments, but you hung the major precepts of all the other religions? And I was like, and what about the kid who's an atheist? Now they're being exposed to all of these. The answer is none. Like,
Right.
I can't be the one who's, saying here are, I mean, it would be fine if I taught a religion class. There are, comparative religion classes. That's
Well, I
wonderful.
was going to say that, right? Because theology of religion is an extremely different thing.
Yeah.
Or, like, especially in English, right? Like, you can teach the Bible as
Right.
mythology, you can teach it as story and compare it to the other, like, origin stories from the other religions and mythologies and, across different cultures and things like that, right? Like, because you can, if you take out the religious aspect of it, where it's like, this is all true, you can do that, right?
Although
But
it
that's
can
not
get uncomfortable. We teach a mythology class, and I've taught it a couple of times, and it's a wonderful class. And it doesn't teach the Bible as mythology, but we teach Gugamalion, the flood story, the ancient Greek flood story, and you'll have kids go, "This is a lot like the Noah's Ark story," and you just kind of go, yeah, moving on." Like the kids can see, oh, all these stories that they were taught as the truth are, variations of other myths from other groups. And we just kind of go, yeah, I'm not weighing in on who copied who. I can tell you which one's older. Moving on.
yeah, I can tell you which one is older, right? And like usually like I let the kids have a conversation about that and I'm like, listen, I'm like one of those people where a lot of times, religion and stories come from somewhere, right? And it's usually trying to explain things that are and especially during that time that were hard and difficult to explain,
And they were often
right?
like
So
natural phenomena.
a
Where's,
natural, like, where was this great, why was there this great flood?
yeah.
Why did this occur? How did human beings come to be? How did the earth come to be? I'm like, these were very huge concepts that people could not fathom at that time. So I'm like, people not necessarily created stories. They thought of ways to explain how this happened, right? And whether you believe it's a supernatural being or you believe it's science or you believe it's both, these are the stories they use to explain those things. And if you look at the research and everything, they all kind of align.
Oh, yeah.
So it doesn't really negate anyone's belief. It all goes in a row. So you can believe what you want.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell them.
And it's not my job to tell you what to believe. Like that is
Right.
not my, that's I am
Yeah.
presenting you with these stories, and that's it. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. But that's my my news take.
Yeah, yeah, that's well, and that is I am keeping an eye on that as well.
Yep.
So what outside of the screens, what is it you have been doing when you are not writing this summer? I can see some of it behind you. What has been your big craft project?
Okay. So my big crafting thing, I do craft, right? And I said one of my hobbies is I create like crochet stuffed toys and this is like so nerdy, but it is so much fun and like clothes and stuff for them. I actually have some that I could show you.
Oh yes, absolutely.
I do. And I just like finished these guys and they're so stinking cute.
Oh my gosh. So for the podcast listeners, describe what it is they are looking at right now because they're adorable.
Okay. They are tiny brown bunnies that I have crocheted wearing two different styles of swimsuits and hats. One is a frilly pink swimsuit in a very wide sun hat, and the other one is like a old-fashioned short swimsuit in white and red with like a little bowler hat, and they're best friends.
Bunnies on the beach in 1910.
Yes, that's what they
oh,
are.
that is adorable.
My bunnies.
So
So
how
yes,
long do they take to create one of those?
it depends. It depends on like how quick like I work it up. These guys are a little small, so I think like each bunny maybe like took me like 2 or 3 days, and
Yeah,
then I had to make
that's
their little
fast.
outfits, you know. But
Yeah.
everything comes off too, which is like ridiculous, like hilarious. Like I can change their outfits and stuff, so everything like comes off and like the little hats.
Oh, that's so great. And do you find that it is like a kind of therapy? Like this is, like a meditative exercise? Like, nope,
It is.
I'm making
It's
bunnies.
it's become like that because like it's like very it is again it's like very structured and you have to like count like you have to count like the rows and like getting it all together. Like I kind of messed up the hat a little bit, but it came out fine, whatever. But like, and I just think that they're very cute. Like the collection has grown considerably since I started doing this. um I also have a cat that I made wearing a unicorn onesie. I have a mole in a gardening outfit.
That's awesome.
I have a teddy bear in a swimsuit, because their attire changes based on the season
Yeah.
because they cannot be out of season.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. They've got to be, fashionable. You wouldn't want to be wearing white after Labor Day if you are a mo
No, of course not. They and like and they'll be like cold. Like they have to wear coats.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, that is great.
So these are my bunnies. As you
Oh,
can see, look, you can see like the yarn on the couch. Like clearly I'm working on something else.
oh yeah. Nonstop.
Um, they also have swim rings, like, because if they go swimming,
Oh,
they need to be able to float.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Un-
floaties. Yeah, of course.
Unreal. Yeah, this is like I just finished because I also have mice that I've made. The mice thing is a little bizarre, but like these are like some of the swim rings.
Oh my gosh. So it's not just a ring. It is a little
This is a flamingo.
flamingo ring. Oh,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
a flamingo, and then there's also a duck.
Little rubber ducky. Ah,
Yeah,
wonderful.
it's ridiculous. I know it is ridiculous, but it brings me so much joy,
Oh yeah.
so much joy.
Oh, that's great.
Clearly, like, your YouTubers can see, but on the podcast, like, I am a stuffy enthusiast and collector. I have a wide range or like behind me. I enjoy them. It like brings my inner child a lot of
Yep.
joy. And it's reached peak now because I also make my own.
Yeah. Yeah. When you've gotten to the point where you're like, I must be involved in the creation of these. That's well, and I've got my own, I have the xenomorph from Alien here because I teach a
That's
sci-fi lit class, and the mouth
that
is actually a zipper.
stop it.
Isn't that clever? I did
That
not
is
make this. I purchased
amazing.
this. Isn't that cool?
That is amazing. That's like one of the best things I've ever seen. I'm just
Yep.
gonna leave the bunnies
I have a
up here.
Cthulhu on my mantle. That's a plushie Cthulhu because that's my personality right there is like an eldritch god that is going to
Yeah.
destroy us all, but is also adorable.
I'm like I don't even know how to explain what my personality is. I adore like really cute, like cuddly things, but then I'm also like a semi-jaded New Yorker and I wear a lot of black.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also a
Yes.
millennial.
I mean, I think that's really good right there. The semi-jaded New Yorker in black making plushies.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
that's awesome.
conundrum. It's just a literal conundrum.
Yep. Oh,
But
that's
I'm also
awesome.
like kind of perky and stuff too. It's like very weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going
Oh, that's great. Well, we're going to go to our commercial break. When we come
on. Okay.
back, I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately.
Hmm.
Special announcement time. NotAPipe Publishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, the show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone: 10,000 views on YouTube. So to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60-second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run one or two of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the NotAPipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books.
Bold Rising. Algo and their team of enforcers take on the underbelly of Geneva megacity before being sent on a mission to Mars, a cesspit of corporate exploitation. Suong, a child laborer, must turn the heart of Agent Algo while the fate of Mars, her friends, and her family hang in the balance. Cold Rising. Cold Rush novella, available now on Amazon. No one wants to live in a country ruled by wizards, unless the alternative is worse. Peter Watts, author of Blindside, says, a near-perfect blend of implacable horror, gallows humor, and ecological apocalypse. Nick Namadas, author of The Second Shooter, says, relentlessly radical and often hilarious. Cascade, Book 1 in the Sleep of Reason trilogy, by Rachel Rosen. Available now at bookshop.org, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and at bppress.ca.
I'm realizing I need to do a better job of telling folks this. People can't know what we refuse to share. I'm a big fan of audiobooks. I've been doing a ton of work in my yard, and audiobooks have been my constant companions throughout. I know there are some people who say reading an audiobook doesn't count as reading. They are wrong. Reading with your ears requires some of the same skills as reading with your eyes, and some distinct skills, but it's still creating meaning from a text, and it counts. I have 5 of my books out in audiobook, on Audible and Amazon. The Convention of Fiends, Book 1, Don't Read This Book, and Book 2, You Were Warned. Corporate High School is narrated by Crystal Kay, and she did an amazing job. I narrated The Digital Storm with some cool voice changer software for some of the characters, so that sounds like a bit of an ensemble. And I recorded one of my collections of poetry, This Uneven Universe, as a gift for my wife Crystal, who wanted to be able to listen to it while driving. So if audiobooks are a way you enjoy reading, check those out. And if you like them, let me know, readers and reviewers. So welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Rachel Corsini. And Rachel, when you've been daydreaming lately, what have you been daydreaming about?
Okay, so daydreaming is like a very weird thing for me, and it always happens at like the worst possible moment, right? Like I'm driving somewhere and I'm like, oh, wow. And then I'm like, okay, I probably should be paying attention where I'm driving, or in the shower, or like right before you go to bed. But usually like my daydreams actually do involve stuff that has to do with writing.
Yeah.
It's usually a scene will come to me that from my work in progress or something like that, or something that I want to work on, or like developing a plot or something. And then eventually, like when I get to wherever I'm going, or I hop out of the shower, I'll like take out my notes app and I'll try and like get it down, because I'll forget. The worst time to daydream is before you're falling asleep, because I'm not doing anything then.
Yeah.
Nothing's
that one's
happening.
lost.
Yeah, that's lost to the ether. but that's like my big like daydreams, or also the fantasy daydreams of like actually like Sushi and Sea Lions becoming a bestseller and like
Oh
getting a
yeah.
movie deal and quitting my
Do you
job.
do the stunt casting in your head where you're like,
Oh, I
and these would be who would be playing these parts? I totally have done that in mine.
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. They were like my characters, I pretty much try and cast them like before I really get into like a lot very in depth with the writing, because that helps me know their visualization.
And be consistent. You're like, no,
And
no, no, that's not
yes,
what that character looks like because I've got a real
right,
clear sense. Yeah.
right. So I knew that Vincent, who was the love interest, was based on Tom Hardy, like from Jump. And and then I also knew that Daniela was based on Lily Collins. So there's like this very huge, again, they're like they're opposites, right? So
Yeah.
he's like this big, like,
Yeah.
sorry, like very heteronormative,
Yeah.
whatever. Sorry about that. But like, that's also kind of Sushi and Sea Lions was, it is like my first novel, and Daniela is kind of based on me. So, that is my personal preference. I prefer like that kind of guy.
Well, and tell everybody the premise because this is so great.
Okay, so Daniela Verdi, she's a famous, pretty well-known, famous prima ballerina at like a top ballet company, and then everything falls apart, right? So she suffers this horrible injury, and she can never dance again. So she's no longer a ballerina. And then also the guy that she is seeing, actually the meme now, 6'5" Blue Eyes Finance Trust Fund.
Yeah.
That's the guy. And so he is like, wait, you thought we were in a relationship? It was a situationship the whole time, and that totally falls apart. And so she is heartbroken, has no money, has no career, and she has to move back to her neighborhood in Queens where she grew up and restart her whole life. So everything sucks. Everything sucks at the beginning of the book. And then she's out at like the local bar in the neighborhood for her brother's birthday, and she kind of reunites with her brother's best friend, Vincent, who's like also sucks because his wife cheated on him, and now he's going through a divorce, and he has a son named Matthew. So he's also back in the neighborhood and like renting an apartment. Meanwhile, he like lived in this beautiful house on Long Island and like all this kind of stuff. So, and then they come together based on that. There's a lot of like it's a very internal book because she's trying to figure out what to do with herself, also getting over this heartbreak. There are some really funny moments with her, and him too, because he's like kind of a disaster. But yeah, so that's the premise of the story.
Yes.
And so she has to figure everything out. She goes back to school to become a teacher, and she's going through school like she's back in grad school, like learning how to become a teacher, which is also, I mean,
right.
She's like, what have I done?
Yeah. Right. Yes. Yes. We have been there.
Right, because grad school is the worst.
Well, and so much of it doesn't apply. Like, oh yeah, this is great. I'm learning about Vygotsky. I will not have to think about Vygotsky again for probably ever. Like, like,
oh my God, Pavlov's dogs. I can't,
yes.
like the whole thing. So that's the premise of the book. But again, like I said, right, like it's my first book there is some stuff that's kind of like true to my life and like things that like I went through and dealt with. And I used all of that to create Daniela and her story. And so it is kind of like very close to me in that way. And again, so like Vincent is like my preference when it comes to guys. And I'm probably a little bit more traditional in that sense,
Yeah.
when it comes to that, like the guy that not necessarily like, not that I don't want to work or like stay home and whatever and bake bread. No, they're not that kind of traditional, but like, the guy's a guy, the girl's a girl, like,
right.
And that's my preference. Right. Yeah. But my work in progress is a little different. The main character of that is the polar opposite of Daniela. She's way more logical. She's less spontaneous. She's like less creative. She thinks things through more, almost to like her own detriment, but she's also a millionaire. So she's very financially successful. She's very career oriented, career driven in that way. Not that Daniela wasn't. It's just a different discipline, right?
Yeah.
Like Trisha was always more money oriented. Like, how can I be financially successful? How can I make a name for myself in this like male dominated field? And she does, and she's got a bajillion dollars. And then her love interest is actually second chance romance, and her love interest is not that.
Yeah.
And he's like just this wonderful cinnamon roll, and you just want to squeeze him. So they are very different.
Yeah.
Very different polar opposite end stories.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, my work in progress. I'm just finishing up this trilogy, and the main love interests are, a lesbian couple, and I am like painfully straight, like ridiculously, cishet white guy, and so like, yeah, sensitivity readers, like beta readers who could say you're getting that wrong. That's actually not right, but
yeah,
that's who the couple is, and so
No.
that was really fun to write and kind of learn about, like, how would this be different, and how would it be the exact same in terms of the flirting and that kind of thing. And so
right,
that
like
was fun.
what's the dynamic,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, because I mean, I tend to steer more towards things that I know about, right? Like, because it just kind of makes me a little bit uncomfortable. But one thing I will say is that, like, first of all of my books take place in New York, or like Queens, or like in around those areas, with like a lot of cultures and stuff that I happen to be familiar with. So like Daniela and Vinny are Italian, which I'm Italian. So that was simple, right? Like the food, the way the families operate, all of that, like that was great. Like, because I used all of that, right? Like, his mom being worried about him taking the next step with like the new girl, and like, his sister and her family and the way they operate, like, and her brother, I think at one point she tells him, no, that he tells her, your brother said that he would break my face if I hurt you, right? Like, because, right, that's
Very,
just
very, yes, very normal, yes.
right. And Trisha and Nick, in my work in progress, they're Greek, which is not so far off, but it's still there's slight nuances that are different, right?
Yeah.
But I have best friends of mine that are Greek, and so I have had an insight into that culture, and like the Greek dancing and the food and the family gatherings, and my good friend's father plays bouzouki, and so like I know what that is. Like I a little bit of the language, so like I kind of have insight into that, and I could also like ask them questions. So I know
that's the key, having somebody you can ask too. Am I getting this right? Does this feel right to you?
I feel like I can't really mess it up that bad. So, like I know that culture, but this is also kind of a little trilogy that I do have planned. So the next book, Melly, the other friend, she's Puerto Rican. And so now, yes, I have Puerto Rican friends, like I have Spanish friends, but I don't have as much insight into that. So I'm really going to have to like dig, and whatever, because I also wanted to represent that Queens, they say it all the time, Queens is the most diverse borough in New York City. It is the melting pot of New York City, right? We have every single cultural background that you could possibly think of. You could get any kind of food that you could possibly think of, you could get it in Queens. And so I was like, Daniela would not have all Italian friends.
Right.
They would come from all different that would be weird. Right. They would come from all different backgrounds. They would all speak different languages, right? So Daniela's Italian, Trisha's Greek, and her other friend Melly is Puerto Rican. And all three of those girls, they've been friends forever. So each book also kind of has like a significant cultural influence also in the story that kind of bleeds its way through in the things that they do. Like in my work in progress, Nick's mom, she's a Greek chef, and she works at a Greek restaurant in Astoria. I don't know if you know about Astoria, but Astoria in Queens is famous for its Greek community and its Greek food and cafes and that culture. And so I was like, of course his mom is a Greek chef. Of course she home makes him spanakopita, and like he hates it anywhere else. Like it makes sense. And so like that's how I kind of like draw that out in the story without it weighing it down. But that's in all of my books. I'm like, that's a big part of what I do.
Yeah,
And usually,
getting that right.
yes.
Yeah.
And this work in progress has been difficult for me because usually I write about like some kind of the arts or like dance or like something like that. And Trisha is not into any of that.
Mm.
And so that has been really hard because she's not an artist. She's not a dancer. She doesn't sing. She doesn't act. She's purely logical numbers, sciencey. Like that is her personality, right? And so that's been really, really interesting and like also difficult.
How I don't know, it might be too late, you might be too far into it, but having somebody like that have a guilty pleasure art form where it's like, and I don't tell anybody, but I'm secretly really into Star Trek. Like a character like that, you'll find a lot of folks who are like, your engineers who are like, I'm secretly really into building Legos, and so that could be really fun to find out she does have an art, but it's an art that she, in her world of kind of high financy things, doesn't feel like she can say, and also when I need a break, I go build Lego sets, or I go watch, old Star Trek episodes and go to Star Trek conventions once a year.
That is,
Wouldn't that be fun for her?
That would be really fun, but she does actually do a lot of yoga.
Okay.
So she's very
she's got her thing, but see,
she
yoga
has her
can
thing.
be like, I ought to do yoga. Like this
No,
is
no,
the
no.
thing that in my world of, high finance, I'm supposed to do this. Whereas the guilty pleasure thing can be like, because she could tell people she does yoga. Nobody's going to look down on her for yoga, but she's afraid if people find out that she's really into sewing plushies as a way of like calming herself down after crunching numbers all day, she's a more interesting character at that point. So
yes, but she is like super into yoga, and it's actually really funny. There's one scene, because Daniela is not, which I think is really great because as a ballerina, you think that she would like that stuff. No, no, no.
Yeah.
She hates it. She hates yoga, and like would rather just take a ballet class, right? So
that provides a little.
Yeah, right. So anyway, but there's like one part in the work in progress where Trisha bullies Daniela into taking a yoga class with her because something happens in the story. Obviously, I'm not going to give it all away. And then they get there, the studio, and the only class that's available is Bikram.
Which I don't know. I don't know enough about yoga to know. Is that the hot yoga or is that
yes,
the? Oh,
yes,
okay.
Bikram is the hot yoga, and Daniela is like, no. And then Trisha signs them up anyway. And then when they get out, like they're all like sweaty and like
oh yeah,
like this was so great. And Daniela's like,
this is the worst thing I've ever done.
It was the worst day of my life.
That's awesome.
Yes, which is really funny because you think because she's a dancer and athletic that she would kind of just be into it.
And no. She's like, no, not gross. I don't do gross.
I don't do gross. I do elegant.
Yes, exactly. That's great.
And then they go eat food after.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, so I wanted to ask, what are some announcements? What's coming up for you your book just came out. When did it come out?
So it came out May 16th, 2023. So a little over a year ago. And you know how it is in like the romance space and stuff like that. It's really kind of difficult to make a name for yourself, but I think I've done pretty good,
Yeah.
I'm kind of out there. I think like people have seen it or, that stuff like that. So that feels really, really good. I've gotten some pretty good reviews. It's been nominated for some awards, which is really exciting.
That's cool.
Yeah. Recently, it was listed in the semifinals for the Book Bloggers Novel of the Year Award.
Oh, very cool.
So, which, I don't know if you've like looked into those or whatever. It's sponsored by the Folio Society and there's another one, but and it's kind of big. So yeah. I've made it into like I think out of all the entries, it's like the top like
Oh, that's very exciting.
Something. Yeah. So that was like, that's huge. So I was like freaking out when I got that email. I was like, oh my God. So yeah, it's been nominated for things right now. Like I said, I'm currently focused on my work in progress. So there's, I don't have like any deals in the works or anything like that.
Yeah.
If I had like an audiobook or like a movie deal, I'd be screaming,
Yeah.
But I don't. I'm just putting it out there into the universe, just saying.
Right.
But so right now, that's exactly what's going on. I'm kind of just focusing on finishing my draft of my work in progress, and Sushi and Sea Lions is nominated for some awards. It's still getting itself out there, and that feels really good. I'm like, it's my first book, so I'm kind of still like reveling in it a little.
Yes.
Like, it's kind of like, all right, like how much of a writing machine do you really want me to be? Like, I also just, it's kind of important to me, I think, to like do it at my own pace. Like, I don't want to be just like,
I tell the authors I work with, because often there is this fear that like, oh, if I don't put out another book within, this amount of, it's not true. Like I have,
no.
I have, waited 10 years for the next in a series, and it's just fine. I still read it. So,
Right.
yeah, I have to tell authors all the time, take the time to write the better book. Like it,
Relax.
yeah.
And I take a while anyway, right? Like, so
Well,
I've
we're
noticed,
teachers. We have full-time jobs. It's very
yes,
full-time.
but I've also noticed that each book like requires its own thing, right? Yeah. So like this book, my current work in progress, not that Sushi and Sea Lions didn't tackle difficult themes, right? Because Daniela's got she's got some stuff, like some deep-rooted stuff. Like, I mean, I don't really like fully come out there and say it like blatantly, and maybe I should have, but maybe I was a little afraid, but she definitely has consistently battled an eating disorder and disordered eating. That is throughout the book. She's dealing with, lack of self-esteem. She's dealing with obviously the collapse of her life, her heartbreak. There are there's some heavy things that are like going on there. But this book, I actually realize is a little bit even, it starts out a little bit even darker, right? Like the main character has a thing about like men and power, and she starts to blame herself for a lot of things that have happened between her and men, and is struggling with admitting certain things to herself that have happened to her, or the way she's been treated, or not allowed to happen, but has gone along with because of the power struggle and like situations that she's been in. So, and that's a very, very, very heavy thing. And so I think that's why it's taken me so long also, because I want to treat it the correct way, the proper way, but I also don't want that to overtake the story, because that's not necessarily what the entire story is about. Right. It is still a love story, right? Because she is finding love, but there are things that have happened to her that happened to her that need to be dealt with within the story. So there's like a balance, and that has been difficult. So I keep like going back and forth and back and forth. Like, is this too fast? Is she really not addressing this? Is she just throwing this on the back burner? Like, there's a point where she decides to go to therapy, and she's going to like sit down and talk about these things. So like, what does that mean for her and her actual relationship, right? There's going to be all of this kind of stuff. So it's heavier, and it takes longer. When you're writing a heavier book, it takes longer. Yep. Because you don't want to be in that headspace all the time either.
Right. It's not, right. And you want to process it fairly, and give it the attention that it deserves. Right.
And I write internal women's fiction. Like, I have to put myself in that position. Like, I'm writing as this character, I want it to be believable by people that read it. That this is the way that someone might actually process this, or not admit to themselves that this is exactly what happened. Yeah. Right. And so you have to go back and forth on that. So that's why
you have the good writing day where you're sobbing.
Yeah.
And it's a successful writing day.
Right. Or it's like,
really, I wrote something really great today, and I am a wreck.
Yeah. And I'm done now. Yeah. I'm done. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. I've been there. So what is something that you would, what's a book that you have not read yet that you're looking forward to, that's on your TBR pile?
Ooh, what is on my TBR that I'm looking forward to read? Okay. It has been sitting on my shelf. I can't tell you how long. And I think it's just, I know it's going to be good, but I think it's also the fear, because it's so long that it'll just take me forever.
Yeah.
The latest Outlander. Go Tell the Bees I'm home, because it's like 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can legit commit to it right now. And also on the flip side of that, which is stupid as hell, because it'll take me like 10 minutes, Batman versus Bigby, the Fables crossover.
Batman versus whom?
Bigby Wolf.
Oh,
They did a crossover with Batman and Bigby Wolf from Fables. And the graphic novel is sitting on my shelf. I've yet to crack it open, and it'll take me literally a day.
yeah. Yeah, but that would be super fun. I did not know that was out. So
Oh, you have to get. Have you read Fables?
no, I haven't read any of them. That's is that Gaiman?
No, it's Bill Willingham.
Bill Willingham.
It's all the fairy tales. It's every single fairy tale, and they are trapped in Fabletown in New York City because there's
That's where all the fables come together.
well, yes, but it's also there's like a war happening in their homeland. So they all flee to this
Oh,
area in New York City. And Bigby Wolf is the sheriff of Fabletown, but they all hate him because he's the big bad wolf.
yeah. I see. Okay. And so now
And
they've done a DC
yep,
Bigby Wolf versus Batman. Oh,
yep,
that's great.
yes, because it was also Fables' 20th anniversary when this came out. So they did a bunch of special issues of Fables. Like there's like a new Fables arc that they did for the 20th anniversary, and then they also did the Bigby versus Batman.
I will find those and put links to those in the show notes for folks because
I
that sounds
feel like,
awesome.
oh my God, I feel like you would really
Oh
enjoy
yeah,
this.
that is right up my
Like,
alley. Like that's I'm a
I have
comic book nerd going back to, middle school,
I
elementary.
have
And
I
so
have
yeah.
every single one, every single issue, plus every single crossover story that they did. It's an insane amount of
Oh yeah.
text. I have read all of it. Which, speaking of, I should probably read this stupid graphic novel now after I get off of this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's
I'm
sitting
just
there.
like, you know what, you moron.
Yes. Oh, that is great. So where can folks find you online?
They can literally find me everywhere. So I am on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, all as Madam Ray Ray. And you can also get me on Facebook. I'm Rachel Corsini Writer. You can find my page there. I am on where else am I? I think I might have
It's exhausting, isn't it? I'm on all of them
I
as
have a
well.
I have a website, rachelcorsini.com. And yeah, but my big ones are that I focus a lot on. You'll find my videos and stuff there are on Instagram and TikTok. So that's usually like where I update everything the most. And you'll get all my info there. And I do like even it's not all like buy my book. I don't do that. Like I get like weirded out by that. But I do like you know, like videos on writing stuff. I do book reviews. I do like a little like snippets lifestyle stuff. There's like videos of me doing ballet on there. You could see that like yes, like it's real. Like I do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's like a mix of certain things because I want people to like not just be like, oh, this girl wrote a book, but like also kind of like get to know me like as a human being too.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, that's
right.
I'm big on like how can we let readers know it's not just my
Right.
book. I'm a human,
Yes, I'm
great.
a human. The only thing that is not on there, weirdly enough, is I have yet to do a video where I do this.
But it's out in the world now. I mean, people
It's
who are
out in
watching
the
this, like,
world.
now they know.
Now everyone knows. And I've been asked about this being, sorry for the podcasters, being the bunnies, the crochet bunnies. And I have been asked by like a few friends of mine and stuff like that. They're like, why don't you sell what you make on Etsy? Like you can make extra money. And you know what? Like I realized I kind of monetized everything else. Like I get paid to teach ballet. I get paid to write books. And it's like, like I want this for me. Like I don't want someone ordering something on Etsy, like dictating what I create. And then I feel like I'll hate it and then don't want to do it anymore.
Yes,
Like
during during the
me.
lockdowns, I got into painting a little bit, and people would be, I'd post pictures of what I was painting, and people were like, "You could sell these," and I was like, "No, I don't.
No.
I don't need another thing in my life. Plus, I don't think people understand. Like people who do that stuff on Etsy, it's another job. Like I don't need another job. I don't need
no.
selling more
I
stuff.
already
It's a lot of work. Etsy folks they're pros, and that's a lot of work, and I don't need to compete with them.
No, and I already work 2 jobs.
Yeah.
And like, and I kind of feel like if I choose to give them away to if I make something and I'm like, I want to give this to somebody, then that's my choice.
Yeah.
Right. I've made that decision to give it to somebody. And that's like special.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, it makes it priceless. Like, here's this
Yes.
thing that, once you tack a figure on it and put it on Etsy, okay, I have now given you a gift that you can hop on Etsy and find out is worth $19.99. Or I
Right.
gave you this priceless thing I made just for you. Like,
Right.
I think that's
Yes.
great.
And like my friends like love it. Like when it's like random, I'm like, hey, like I made this for you. And they're like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those are awesome.
Yeah.
So who would be somebody you would recommend I have on the show?
Oh, you know what? I have a few people. You should ask other writer friends of mine. I have my friend Diane Billis. She writes YA romance, and she's actually coming out with a YA superhero romance, but it's also she does LGBTQIA sapphic
Yeah.
and stuff like that. She's amazing. Her name's Diane Billis. And you could also ask my friend Regina Brownell. She's a very kind of very strict rom-com contemporary romance writer. And I think she would love this. I think she would have a really good time.
Oh, that would be great. Okay, well, I will reach out to them. So before we get to our send-off, there's some folks I have to thank. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3 Ds. And thanks to Halisna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email me about that. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com and check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it. And please check out Rachel's Sushi and Sea Lions. Tell a friend about it. Even a very short review and that single click on that 5th star makes a huge difference for Rachel. So check out Sushi and Sea Lions and then give it that 5th star and make Rachel's day. And I'm too old to tell anybody smash that like button, but if you could gently tap on the like button for this show, I would appreciate that as well. Before we, Rachel, as folks are going into their week, what is your piece of advice for everybody?
This is something that I have had to really take to heart, right? Like, so this is what I'm going to send everyone off with. Never compare your journey to someone else's.
Yeah.
And go forward in your own journey, and you are right where you're supposed to be. And what's meant for you will always come to you. Stop worrying about it.
Yes, I completely agree. And the only thing I will add is folks out there, no matter how much you procrastinate, Rachel and I are still proud of you.
Yes. And I'll give you something else to procrastinate with.
Exactly. Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
If I take my time, I make up my